Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Rank Stuff. This is going to be interesting one because when you think
Hmm.
of a filmmaker with a set style or tone or whatever, it's hard to think of another one that has two different sets of tones. You know what I mean? Like he's a
Right.
comedy director first half, and then he's a political director the second half. So
I was gonna say he did have a tone, he did have a style for a while up to a point, and then he took a big detour, a big left turn, and went a whole nother route. But that's why this is going to be an interesting ranking, Henry. Is we're talking Adam McKay, who started out as the sort of Will Ferrell ish,
yeah,
comedy, director, and he's been doing the more political kind of a not so much serious tone because he's still got comedy in there, and some lighter stuff, but more of a satire, sort of a political guy. So, it should be an interesting ring. We got 8 movies to talk about here.
yeah. So it's one of those ones when you think of like this filmmaker, you think of like what you grew up, especially like for me, I'm about to be 30, so like his era of the comedies are like right at the sweet spot of like 2000 comedies. So regardless of
Hmm.
like where I have them ranked, I know that I've either seen them a bunch or they've like been part of the culture. So just
Hmm.
thinking of them, it just always it has that memory. So I always sometimes have to remind myself, do I love these movies or do I just know them so well because they're just in my mind? So sometimes I have to check that and just kind of rewatch them and just double check. Or sometimes I'm like, are these overrated because of how much talk about them? No, pretty fire. So and then the political stuff,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be honest, I'm not really a political guy. So that's one of the ones where it's not as big for me, but I don't hate it because Adam McKay is a talented filmmaker. I will give him credit for that because
Hmm.
like you said, it combines the seriousness with the satire slash parody, not really full parody, but kind of like satire, and it just covers that. But it does a good job of at least being entertaining films and not slogs. But what do you
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
memory of a first Adam McKay movie that either you saw in
Yeah. No,
theaters or just
it was
impacted you?
definitely. I mean, it's definitely like I didn't, the name at the time didn't mean anything. But I definitely saw Anchorman in the theater, like for sure. And I remember being excited about that movie. Here's a fun fact: I didn't like Anchorman the first time I saw it. I kind of rejected it. But but I went back to it later on. There was something fascinating about it, and I've come around to it big time. And we'll see where it ranks in my overall filmography here. But I just associated with the time with just Will Ferrell. It's just a Will Ferrell movie, because he was blowing up right after Old School, and he had come off SNL, so he was high on that sort of thing. And then I think his name really started to come out with like Step Brothers,
Yeah.
because you started seeing that same director over and over again, and then he got
Essentially the
much
director of Anchorman and Talladega Nights,
right,
Adam McKay.
right. McKay, yeah. And then when The Big Short came out, it was like, oh, the guy who did Anchorman and Step Brothers
Yeah.
is doing this, this movie about like, the housing crisis. That's
Yeah.
interesting. We'll see if it works. Then, obviously whether or not it worked, we'll talk about it. We're in our ranking. So, I think that around that time is probably around, the 2010s when people started to, really recognize the actual name of
Yeah. My
Adam
name,
McKay.
yeah. It's a similar beat of like Todd Phillips when he came out with War Dogs and then eventually Joker, whereas like I don't know, I'm on the fence. It's a comedy director. Can he do
Yeah.
it?
Four
Yeah,
Dogs Hangover guy. Can he really pull this off? And it's like, yeah, he
exactly.
pulled it. Joker's great. Yes, he did.
Exactly. So it just shows that comedic people or directors,
Mhm.
showcase that they can, because that's one of the ones. If you're talented in comedy, you're probably talented overall. That's why a lot of people, were hesitant with Get Out for Jordan Peele, but then are proven like now he's just an auteur at this point, and he came back with a comedic background. So I would never like sleep on people with comedic backgrounds because obviously they have
Well,
the
and,
mindset.
and even in an acting sense, Henry, I mean, you think about comedians who then turn into drama. Most of the time, it's very successful because even comedic actors will tell you, comedy is harder than drama
Yeah.
overall. Getting those funny beats, getting those laughs, so that when you see stuff like Robin Williams, then doing drama, he was very successful at it. Even Will Ferrell with stuff like Stranger Than Fiction, like he's very good in that movie. And taking those dramatic turns. So a lot of the time it works because comedy is actually a little tougher to get over sometimes than the drama.
You know what would actually be interesting? The exact movie of Stranger in Fiction directed by Adam McKay. I just feel like
Yeah.
it would be obviously generally the same movie, but different at the same time because Adam McKay and what is that, Mark Forster, who directed that one.
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
have different enough tones that I feel like it would be it would either be better or worse. It would not be the same movie, and you know what I mean. But like the same script, just because of the directing, and that'd be funny. But it's just funny that you said the Will Ferrellness, and it's like, yeah, Will Ferrell definitely a lot of these movies. So, you ready to just go ahead and get started?
Yeah, we'll just get rolling. Yeah, like I said, we've got 8 movies. So yeah, with the blend of the political dramatic stuff and the comedies, this could get interesting as far as the ranking goes. So yeah, we'll get started.
All right, so I'm gonna start off, and
Mhm,
I'm going to go with my only negative. I'm not high
mhm.
on the next couple, but this is my only one that's negative, and I rewatched it today just to double check. But Anchorman 2 is just not good to me. I did not enjoy it. Like I wrote this
Well,
in my letterbox review.
well,
I
I was
s-
gonna say we can talk about it now because it's also my number 8.
there we
So
go. Good.
yeah,
I
uh,
wrote this in my letterbox review. I said I'm not gonna act like I didn't laugh a couple times, but most of it was like kind of
sure.
awkward laughs because it's so stupid that it's like, all right, that's okay. Like it's kind of like a defense mechanism laugh, but a lot of it is just so awkward that it's just like boring. It's honestly boring, and like it's a 2 hour
It's a
movie that
boring
doesn't
movie.
need to be. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it does it goes on the bits like the whole like when Megan Good's character is introduced, and then Will Ferrell just constantly the black like
Mhm.
a couple times it's fun. Like what movie was that in the 2000s? Mole moly
Oh,
moly moly.
Gold Member. Yeah, the Austin
Yeah.
Powers movie. Where
You know what I mean? Like, you can
yeah,
do it
same
enough,
thing.
but, like, it gets to a point
Yeah.
where, like, "Alright, come on." Especially because it's already cringe dialogue, because it's already an awkward situation, and then you're overdoing it. It's just like this movie felt more like a Mel Brooks movie to me, and I don't like Mel Brooks, so it's just like, I just don't really like, it essentially felt like it was satiring the first Anchorman, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's one of those where it just clearly is too late in it, you know what I mean? It's just like I said, it's slow, and yeah, it just didn't really do it for me. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. I don't know. Did you have a particular version you watched? Because there's famously like 3 versions of this movie.
I watched
Like
the one on Amazon Prime that's 119 minutes, so
that's
whatever.
yeah, that's the theatrical. Yeah, that's the theatrical. So it's weird because they did this theatrical version. They did the traditional unrated version, which is a little bit different. Then they did what they called a super R-rated version, which was like 2 hours and 25 minutes, which is like good God Almighty. But it's
Fast.
because they filmed so much material. But here's why it's a detriment. They filmed so much material to where every take had like 5 or 6 different versions of jokes and things, just them riffing and stuff. And this is a movie that feels like we have all these situations and we don't have a script. We're just going to let them riff through the entire movie,
It's
which when
called the
you do a comedy
supersized
like
version, so whatever. Yeah,
so
movie.
they did all that. And those movies where they do that and you can tell where they just have this loose script or loose story and they don't hone in on like an actual, and it's okay to have like your actors riff a little bit, like that's fine. We've seen that in movies and sometimes it's good, but you can tell there's these scenes they just let go on too long. Like I hate all the scenes with Brick and Kristen Wiig. Like that stuff is super cringe, like really really bad. It's too much.
Weirdly
um
enough, I kinda like that one. That's weird for me because the
I,
Brick
I
stuff
I
solo,
don't think
I don't like all the jokes with Brick, but when Brick works, and with the Kristen Wiig stuff, I don't know, it's like why I love Punch Drunk Love so much. I kinda like those awkward, weird romance things that just like I don't know, that
I
go ahead.
Yeah, Brick to me works best when he's in the group and he says the weird things, and you have the straight man kind of bouncy just being like, I don't think that's how that works, Brick.
Yeah.
Things that sort of thing. Like that's the stuff that makes me laugh, not so much just them saying the most random, inane things to where you don't understand how these people live in life and not die every day. It's like the Chris Hemsworth character in the new Ghostbusters. Like, how does this dude survive life when he doesn't understand how things work? But like, yeah, it's just one of the things. Like, I like some of the stuff with the 24-hour news network, like when they do their first broadcast and it's like this America, home runs, animals, like the concept, like so there's some
Oh,
good
yeah.
material there. And when they're playing around with like the covering the high speed chases and doing cocaine on the air, like some of that stuff is fun. Again, those core moments like in a vacuum that are okay, but like the stuff with the shark and the lighthouse and all that stuff at the end of the movie like drags on and on and on. It's really bad.
Yeah.
The cameo fight at the end, they're just literally redoing the fight from the first one, and they're just like, let's see how much shit we can pile into this thing, and
Yeah, not a
it's
good
not as
version
good.
of it.
Yeah, it's just not as magical. I just feel like they had all these like loose ideas, and they really just wanted to get together and just play around for like a couple of months, like just as these characters, and it just doesn't feel like a very cohesive,
Yeah.
entertaining movie. Like you said, it goes on. It gets to the point of being boring, where it's just not engaging. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not a big fan of it too.
Yeah, and I honestly literally don't remember if I had actually seen it, a couple years ago.
Mm,
I definitely know I didn't see it when it first came out, but I don't remember if I'd even seen it, like, initially, but it's one of those ones, like, as I was watching it or, like, my memory of it, I'm like, I don't let the internet kind of, like, influence me and my opinions on things, so it's one of those
mhm.
where I was like, "I don't have a good taste in my mouth about this movie." I don't know why, to be honest. And then when I rewatched it, or maybe watched for the first time, I literally not sure, to be honest. But when I watched it today, I was like, yeah, this movie. I literally had to look up reviews. I'm like, am I the only one? And I was like, no, other people are not digging this one either.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. So it is what it is.
It also just it has a different feel to it. It looks different. The vibe is different. And that may be again the thing we talk about with film versus digital. You can tell it's a digital movie. It's a little more muddy and like watered out. Like the original one had this the stuff of the 70s, like they were able to make it pop and like make it like fun and and really bring out the colors and like
There's definitely no
the suits
quotes
that
in
they
this
were
one
wearing.
either.
Yeah,
Like,
the quotes on this one is like again, like you said, there's funny moments. I'm not going to say you don't laugh at all. Like there's definitely stuff that pops out that is funny, but like it's kind of fewer and far between. And there's stuff that like with the original one, we'll talk about it later. But like I quote that movie all the time. Like there's stuff that just sticks out constantly. But yeah, this one there's just nothing that really stuck with me for it. And I don't go back to it a lot.
yeah, so yeah, it's one of those where I can't imagine if ever going back, like for non-trivia purposes. I really can't imagine going back to this, to being honest. My
Yeah.
number 7. This is one that I don't know why I don't hate this movie. Probably because it's Leonardo DiCaprio. Don't Look Up. It's my number 7. It's 3 stars, barely. Like, it's hanging on a thread,
Mhm.
probably because I do like the performances, but I don't really care about the political stuff, as we'll see, soon.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think it's a bad movie by any stretch of imagination. I just don't care. I like bits of
Okay.
it. Like, I like they're, like, similar to, like, Anchorman 2, like, there's funny moments of it. Obviously, this one's not a full-fledged comedy, so it doesn't, like, bother me that it's not, you
Mhm.
know, ha, ha, ha funny, but, like, there's funny moments that keep me engaged, and I love Leo. I love his awkward nerdiness. Him and Jennifer Lawrence have good chemistry for being not love interest, but just kinda, like, scientists and kinda going for that approach. I liked, Tyler Perry's character and what he's doing. I technically like the concept. Like, it's one of those. I literally wrote this in my review. I was just like, I don't really know, like, what's going on, but tell me this doesn't feel kind of real in some moments, because
Yeah.
this is a good version of satire, because the political stuff in this is for the media age. Like, the word network is like a real on movie, and then movies like The Truman Show cover like how people care about media and all that stuff. Like, this does a good job of doing that. I just don't love the actual, like, travesty part of it, and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't hate this movie, but I didn't love it. It's if I was to ever watch it again for like someone like, hey, I want to watch this, I never seen it. I'm a Leo fan, so I'm like, sure, let's. I'm not. It's not gonna be like
Mhm.
pulling teeth, but I'm not gonna go out of my way to rewatch it. So this is why it's number 7 in comparison to the other ones that I'm
Yeah.
also not very high on. Can you talk about
Yeah.
it yet? Not yet.
I'll talk about it a little bit later. I've got it a
Okay.
little bit higher. I will say it was a first watch for me. I had not seen it yet. I had heard it kind of be a little divided. Again, I don't let that influence me either, but I'd seen the divisiveness about the movie online,
Yeah.
as far as like some people were like really digging it, some people were just saying like they hated it, like this sort of thing. So I was at least interested to see where I would stand on it, but I have it a little bit higher, so I'll talk
Okay.
about it later. Yeah. So my number 7 is a movie I've never really vibed with either. I rewatched it because I was curious. It's Talladega Nights. I'm not big on Talladega Nights that the rest of the internet and everybody else seems to be. I didn't even really like it that much in the theater, but I was curious to go back to it because I hadn't been back to it in a long time. Um, Again, it's got moments, only because it's a quicker paced movie, and I get into it at least a little bit more with some of the side characters than I do with something like Anchorman 2. But I don't really like any of the characters in this movie like at all. I think they're all kind of pieces of shit, and to me that hurts because Ricky Bobby starts out as this likable guy who like wants to be this race car driver, but then once he does, he becomes a piece of human garbage, this arrogant piece of garbage, and then I don't like him anymore. And then I start to feel for John C. Riley, and then it's like he takes dude's wife and like starts sleeping with him. So like you turn on him and it's like, who am I supposed to root for in this movie? Who am I supposed to care about? His dad's a piece of garbage. Like his wife is. Who am I with on here? Am I supposed to be with any of these people? I think the only decent human beings in the movie are like Michael Clark Duncan and Jack McBrayer. That's about it.
Amy
Like
Adams.
Amy Adams is fine, but the romance in that movie feels completely forced and out of nowhere. Like
Ricky
there's no
Bobby is
setup
not a
for it.
thinker. Ricky Bobby is a driver, Austin. Jesus
Yes,
Christ.
I know, but I've never been like a NASCAR fan either, so I don't care that much about NASCAR and this thing. Sacha Baron Cohen is trying to do something interesting,
Grips.
but to me it's just I don't get into his character either. His character is just odd and just he's just doing like the stereotypical French thing, and he's trying to put a spin on it, but I don't think it works either. There's just not much about this movie I really like overall. There was a few moments I enjoyed some of the montages that caught me off guard with like him doing the commercials. Like I will say I laughed really hard when they dropped the one F bomb where it's like
Don't chew big red.
I chew big red. If you don't, fuck you. Like I thought that was funny. Like just because it caught me off guard. And there was a couple of things like that were okay, but this one again just felt like they had an idea and didn't really execute. It's actually probably my least favorite out of the Will Ferrell sports comedies. I'm actually a big fan of Semi Pro. But that's just I'm kind of in the minority on that one, and I think that's his best one. But yeah, I don't really dig Talladega Nights. I don't like hate it, but I don't really dig it, and I don't see myself going back to it again. So yeah, Talladega is my number 7.
Hell, Ricky, I was high when I said that. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Let's fucking relax.
Sure.
My number 6. This is going to be my most controversial one because not at this point it's not necessarily the ranking because the rankings can be subjective if you're going comedy heavy or not. But
Sure.
I have this as a 3-star movie, and I honestly just think it's more well made than I give a shit about anything. That's The Big Short. I'm not a fan of the movie. Like I the first time I watched it, I thought, oh, maybe it was just the political stuff, or I wasn't ready for it, blah blah. I watched it again. I was like, yeah, I just don't. I don't like. I borderline want to give it 2 stars. I really just don't care. But the acting is so good, and the filmmaking is creative and inventive, and I give it credit for that. But yeah, I just don't care, dude. Like it's just like Christian Bale's one of my favorites. Brad Pitt's one of my favorites. Ryan Gosling's one of my favorites. You know what I mean? Like 3 legitimately of probably my top 20 actors of all time are in this movie, and I just don't give a shit. Like I don't care. But the only reason I have it above Don't Look Up is just because I technically respect the filmmaking more in that than this. And yeah, or in this than that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I've never been a Big Short guy. It's one of the few, like there's this saying in the community nowadays where I respect it more than I like it. And that's the definition of that, where I do genuinely respect the shit out of it. I just don't care. It just does nothing for me, this movie. It's long. It's just, yeah, it just doesn't do it for me. Clearly, it does something for you. So, this one's gonna be one of those days, Hot Pass. I can already tell.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those. One of those. Right. But then again,
Start your engines. No pun intended.
Again, we didn't know where it was going to go because of how weird the filmography is, just overall, you know. And it's like, yeah, you're going to vibe with his satirical stuff, you know, his satirical or political or serious stuff, or you're just not, or even with the comedy. It's like the comedies, the 4 that he did, the straight comedies. I mean, I know there's comedic stuff in other movies, but like the straight comedies are 3 of them are Will Ferrell movies. Well, actually, all 4 of them, I'm sorry, are, but like they're kind of different, at least as far as the ones that we'll talk about. But yeah, even that is like it's either gonna roll or not. But all right, well, my number 6 is Vice, which I saw for the first time, and
here's my number 5, so we can talk about it.
Okay, yeah, it's the start of my other ones are like 2 stars. This one's a 3. Like I think it was okay. I didn't know what to think going into it. I had heard kind of mixed things about it. yeah, Christian Bale, I definitely admire what he did. He damn near looks exactly like Dick Cheney, which is insane.
Yeah.
That dude is such a chameleon.
His inflection of
And
his
what he
voice is
does,
really good too. Like it just
yeah,
has, it
yeah,
doesn't feel like
yeah,
Christian Bale.
yeah, doing the whole like we got to get the authority to make the decisions to do what we have to do to get the courts on our side. So, and I figured out I'm very good at honing in on impressions. So I figured out what the Dick Cheney is. The Dick Cheney is you kind of grit your teeth together. You don't open up your mouth very much. You drop your octaves a little bit, so you go a little deeper. So you kind of drop it down, space it out a little bit. And, you sort of talk like Clint Eastwood, but you don't use as many ers and growls. You just kind of run your lines very dry, and then that's how you kind of get
You
the Dick Cheney.
feel lucky, punk?
Yeah, right. So it's a little Clint Eastwood, but you don't open up your mouth as much. Yeah, so that's the key to the Dick Cheney that I figured out throughout the movie. But I didn't mind it, like as far as like a straight biopic, and I don't mind political stuff as long as it's done well. I can get into it. I thought Steve Carell was awesome in this movie, and again, for me, it like again cemented how good he is as an actor, and I don't think he gets enough credit for how versatile he is as an actor. You know, like most people just think about him, they think about Michael Scott or they think about Brick, and between this and like The Big Short, he's freaking fantastic. Like he stole this movie for me as Donald Rumsfeld. I thought he looked like he was having fun with the role. He looked like the guy. I don't know how they make him look damn near exactly like him, but that was great. Yeah, the supporting cast was all really, really solid. I thought Sam Rockwell was a little miscast, and I usually like Sam Rockwell, but I thought he kind of was kind of incidental in the movie. Like I don't
Yeah.
even know if you really needed to have George W. in this movie the way it was going. I think you could have had him like just in the background, just kind of here and there. But yeah, overall, I still like the movie, and I don't know if I'll go back to it again, but it was overall fairly enjoyable for me. So I liked it overall, but I didn't love it. So
Yeah. So it's my number 5, but it's one of the ones that I actually just talked myself into as I went. I bumped this up to 4 stars now because I remember the first time I loved it that the initial this is an acting movie. So this is a movie that like compared this to Darkest Hour, the Gary Oldman one, which a lot of people, compare the Winston
yeah,
Churchill and this one, where it's like that movie is only a performance driven movie and everything else is boring and sucks. This
mhm,
movie is a heavily performance driven movie, but Adam McKay does a really good job of making it like fun. You know what I mean? And like
engaged.
there's a thing in, I don't know if it's quite the middle, but like towards the third act or whatever, where they do the fake ending that was like hilarious. Like I
Oh,
remember,
that was great. I remember, yeah, seeing the like where it's like the hypothetical of if he had retired and just gone
yeah,
to the lake house and like was just fishing and yeah, they rolled the credits. I thought that was genius. That was a great move because it was like an hour and 15 minutes in. So like,
yeah,
you're like, wait a minute, what time is it again? Is the
yeah,
movie over?
exactly. I remember in that theater, I heard a very out loud, "The fuck," and it's just like one of those like, yep, that's it. It just did a good job, and like I said, the difference of this and The Big Short for me is like this one, even though it is political stuff, it has enough personal stuff, in there, like the character moments that aren't always as the political thing. And it's one of those where it's like you can't tell if it's like one sided, like if it's how like war movies, like is it a war
Mhm,
movie or is it an anti-war movie? It's one of those where I don't feel like
right.
it's 100% one way or the other. So I don't feel ugly watching it. I feel like I'm just watching a narrative. Like it does a really good job of that.
Mhm,
Where, as um the Big Short, it's preaching to you and it's teaching you, it's trying to like teach you things, whereas in comparison like the Wolf of Wall Street, it does a little bit of that, but for the most part it just pretty much just lets you go for the ride and let the characters do it. So I'm not as interested in
mhm,
that stuff, and in this one you're kind of just, and it also like, like I said, I'm almost 30, so like I was old enough around this time that like I at least have a little, not nostalgia, I don't want to call it that, but just experience. I'm like I know some of these events, so like watching them, it's
right.
essentially why I really like Bohemian Rhapsody, because obviously everything about the real life stuff is way better, but seeing it
Mhm,
on screen is still a good experience. Like it makes you feel, I'm interested. You know what I mean? So like I dug it, and yeah, it's just Christian Bale is just fantastic in this, and Amy Adams does a good job, and it's yeah, I like this movie. Like it's one of those, it's borderline 3-4, just because I'm not going to watch it
mhm,
that often. F really, many times ever again, but it's similar to how I respect Big Short more than I like it. I respect Vice more than I like it, but I still like it. So I give it that
Hmm.
slight edge of, that 4-star range. So yeah, I mean it's
Sure,
my 5, but it's my highest of his political ones because I technically could throw this on and actually watch it, where the other ones
sure.
I probably won't as much.
Yeah,
So
I'm very similar to you. Like it's just like a difference of a 5 or 6 type thing, but I'm
yeah.
very similar as far as like our thoughts and where I kind of landed on it. So yeah, we're pretty close on that. Yeah.
So what is your 5? Because that was my 5.
So my number five, and I'll say right off the bat, my number five, 4, and 3 are all kind of in 4-star territory for me. It's
Okay,
just where I actually rank them as far
that's
as
fair.
enjoyment and my likelihood of watching them again in the future, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, you know. So my number five is The Other Guys, which was one of my wild cards coming back to this. I hadn't seen it since the theater. I remember being kind of lukewarm on it coming out of the theater, but it's been a very long time. It's been what 12 years or whatever since it came out, so I had not seen it. I had not gone back to it. Yeah, I found myself. It definitely played better than it played in the theater for me now, only because I was able to kind of roll with it and just enjoy it for everybody that shows up throughout the movie. Yeah, the chemistry between Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg is excellent. Like all their stuff is really really good with
Paper
Mark Wahlberg
bitch.
almost playing like this. He's almost playing the same character he played in The Departed, just like in a more comedic sense, where he's just constantly kind of yelling and screaming and just going off on people.
He's
You
playing
know,
the character he played in Departed after he shoots Matt Damon and is on his like his second identity.
he's on a
In order
desk
to take
job,
the
and
heat,
he got demoted to a desk job, and he's frustrated about it that he can't do anything anymore, and he's just
pretty
stuck with
much
this nerd. Yeah, and he yeah they caught him for that, and they
took a
maybe
shot at
like
Eli.
discharged him. So yeah, that's kind of what it is. But yeah, all that stuff was really great. I like kind of where their relationship sort of develops, throughout the movie. His reactionary stuff, like I think even Mark Wahlberg's really good when Eva Mendes is introduced for the first time, and he's just like, no, no, seriously, who is
Who is
that? No, who is that? No, for real, no, seriously,
what
who
is
are
up with
you?
you and hot
No,
ladies?
prove it.
The girl just
What's
told his
going on?
IFU.
The formula? What's the goddamn secret? What the fuck? Yeah, like he's just like he just doesn't get it. Yeah, he's going off on a lot of fun. Now, I will say the story again. Why this one ranks lower is I don't give a shit about the story in it, nor am I really fully aware of what's actually like. I was completely confused as to the actual story, the thing that they were going after, like with Steve Coogan. I didn't understand what what the end game was, what the goal was. It was something to do with $32 million. I have no idea what that is, or a billion, whatever it was. Like I didn't care about that at all. But again, like I'm still with the movie because of the chemistry and yeah. What's there to say about the opening stuff with The Rock and Sam Jackson doing
Dancing
like
in high
basically they
chair.
like they're basically doing like the 80s cop thing where they're just destroying everything in sight, kind of like they talked about in Last Action Hero, where it's just like they're destroying all this property for like literally nothing, and but they're trying to be like the heroes. And yeah, I remember in the theater when they jumped off the roof and they just splatted on the ground. I laughed a lot at that. I was like, no, that's exactly what would happen, duh. Like, you idiots. But that's a lot of fun. I'm just not as likely to go back and rewatch this one. I don't know if it's going to become one of my favorites, but I will say it played better than it's ever played before, for sure. So, just not a
I'll leave
personal
it.
favorite.
I'll leave it at
Mm.
that. My
I have
number
a feeling
four.
number one or something. I have a
Yeah.
feeling. I have a feeling if I had to predict it, but yeah,
My number 4 is the one that's going to get me in the second most trouble from Big Short and
mm,
Anchorman. I'm not huge on the first Ink. I don't dislike it. I actually quote it a lot, but every
mm,
time I go to watch it, it's this is the equivalent of a movie that if I just watch the clips, it's top 50 of all time. If I watch the whole
mm.
movie, it's a 4-star movie. Like it's just like it's good, but I don't love like I find myself checking out every time, at least during bits of it. And with comedies, I should never do that. Like I should be invested the entire time. It's just one of those where I don't know what it is about it. I genuinely don't. I've watched this dozens of times and I'm just like, why am I mean, I was late to the party. I didn't watch it till maybe I saw it sometime in the 2000s, but for the most part, it was post 2010s when I'd seen it, at
Mm.
least for sure for the first time. So like, obviously, I didn't have that nostalgia with it, but it's like how no, I can't even compared to Napoleon Dynamite, how people like you had to be there because at least with Napoleon Dynamite,
No,
you
but
either love it or
remember,
you hate
I
it.
wasn't. I was there when it came out, and I didn't like it when it came out. But now I'm
Yeah.
much higher. So I don't think that even has anything to do with it. It's more
Yeah.
just about revisit it. So that may not even be an argument for me personally,
Yeah, I don't.
because I didn't.
I really just don't know what it is because, like I said, I love bits of it, and after watching the second one, where I was kind of offended of how bad it was, it made me appreciate the first one more. But it's still like
Mhm.
not a favorite. You know what I mean? Like it's my least favorite. Well, I guess technically Anchorman 2, but that's not even really a comedy. That's like the Grown Ups 2 version of it, where it's just like, but yeah, it's just it's like I 60% of the time it works every time. Sex Panther. I love Lamp, loud noises, like oh, nine, oh, 1,000, oh, sorry, and you have a massive erection. You're like, all these things, go fuck yourself, San Diego. Like I
Yeah.
talk about all those things, but like, it's one of those where, like I said, when I think of comedy movies that are like my favorites, I should, in theory, be able to just put them in the background for whatever noise, and then
Yeah.
just randomly start watching it more than I'm doing what I'm doing. And this is one where it's just background, and then maybe every once in a while I'll just see the clips that I like. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's always been like that for me. I don't know why. I don't judge people. Like when people have it in their top 100, I'm like, yeah, that's fair. You know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
don't I don't knock anyone for loving this movie. It's just not. I don't know. It's just never been a favorite for me, and I've given it multiple chances. I'm missing something. Like literally in my review, I literally say quotable and fun. Just never been a favorite, and that's really all it is to it. So yeah, I know you're gonna talk about
Yeah.
that in a little bit.
Well, yeah, but again, I know where you're coming from because again, I prefaced it up front, which the first time I saw it, I didn't like it and I didn't vibe with it. And I didn't get it, and then it took me a long time to even come around to being positive on it. Like it took me a lot of viewings to come around to it, and it took like everybody around me like quoting it and stuff. And I was like, well, what am I missing? And then like it finally just clicked, and it's worked. So yeah, it's crept up my rankings as far as comedies of all time, steadily and steadily, pretty much every time I watch it. But yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, I definitely enjoy Anchorman. But yeah, we'll talk about that later.
What
So
is your four?
number four is my most recent watch of the first time is Don't Look Up. So yeah, I'm positive on this movie.
Man,
I liked it, and it may also be my affinity for disaster movies because we just did a tournament by disaster movies, which I kind of was the anchor of, not to make an Adam McKay fun, but I was like one of the things
funny.
people who wanted to do it. I love disaster movies, and the fact that this was basically like Deep Impact, but if everybody was a fucking idiot, like and did not
Not wrong.
in the political thing. I thought this movie, I thought the satire, while it was very obvious stuff, I thought it felt very real. Like this is exactly what would happen if this scenario presented itself now,
I agree.
because we've seen especially over the last few years with like the COVID stuff and like some of the other things about like how people break off into groups and like how people look at everything, all the stuff where it's like, um, no, seriously, this thing's coming, and the other people just being like, nah, it's a hoax, like it's all bullshit, it's whatever, people online just being like, they just lie about everything, whatever, whatever, it's not real, and like even the stuff where it's literally the title of the movie, the Don't Look Up things, I didn't know where that came from, and it's like the hashtag thing of like all the,
Essentially, just ignore it. Like, just don't
yeah,
look up.
just ignore it. What's right there. Yeah, they're literally just like, don't look up. Like that felt very real to me. Like I thought I really appreciated that. The one thing I didn't really like about the movie was the Jonah Hill character. I just thought he was unnecessary. Like just that whole character, I thought you didn't need that because Meryl Streep is playing it enough where she's so oblivious or doesn't care as much. Like I thought that was enough. I didn't about the
Yeah,
back and forth. I didn't need Jonah Hill just parroting everything she said every 2 seconds. Like I just didn't need that.
I
But I
agree.
thought the Tyler Perry and Kate Blanchett characters of like the TV people were
Yeah,
great. Like all their scenes were dynamite. Like Tyler Perry's a good fucking actor, man. I just don't like his Medea stuff, but like he's a really good actor,
yeah.
and he's good in everything that's like not Medea. But yeah,
I
he's
mean, he's
great.
technically good as Medea, just the movies suck.
He's
So
good as
yeah,
yeah, those movies stink. Like I just don't like those movies. I don't like that character. But yeah, everything he's been in outside of that, he's great. But yeah, I liked all that stuff. DiCaprio was really good. It was a nice unconventional role for him. Playing this nerd who, again, his looks they comment on. He becomes like the hot scientist or whatever that people are kind of pining over throughout the movie. And I dug all that. But yeah, and I thought even the movie itself had a nice some nice stuff at the end where they're trying to do all this, you know, plans to blow it up and it fails, so the world actually ends. Spoiler alert. It actually is over, and even the
When it
stuff
happens
in the
when you don't
credits.
come together, you know what I mean? I like
Yeah,
that message.
I feel like that's completely exactly what would happen. Like we would disagree about how to deal with it. The whole thing about them wanting to mine it for trillions of dollars and stuff felt really real too. Like the corporations just being like, no, let's don't blow this up. Let's mine it, and then we'll all just go underground, and then we'll all be rich. It's like
Pretty
money's not
much.
going to matter, idiots. But yeah, all that stuff is good. So I really liked it. I really vibed with it. I thought it was fun. It's a little long. It does feel a little long, but I still kind of rolled with it and had a good time with it. So I'm positive on Don't Look Up. I like it.
Like having this conversation, just thinking about it a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised if I ever did a redux of this and I put this over Big
Sure.
Short. I can only imagine it going up one,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it could even technically jump Big Short just because I technically was more entertained. Like I did like it more. I just thought it was ridiculous. I know I'm it's what it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like it's just not my
Yeah,
bag and not my personal taste. Like like you said, it's how it is for this type of genre, I guess.
sure.
Um, so I'll go to my number 3 now, and my number 3 is one you've already talked about, Talladega Nights. This is now we're getting into my bangers. I love this movie, dude. Like this is the movie
Okay.
that's just like staple of like. So I think of Talladega Nights is equivalent to like Pineapple Express for me in terms of like it's so dumb that it's so much fun. Like the story isn't as potent like movies like Superbad and stuff like that where it's and Hangover where like the plot is actually kind of good, whereas like the plots really don't matter, but they're just so much fun and it just the characters. It's one of the ones where it's so quotable, but like I actually do like all the characters. Like I love the dynamic between Ricky and Cal. I love the dynamic between Ricky and his kids, how they're shitbags. And then with the parents, and obviously his mom, Jane Lynch, she's like, if we want to raise a bunch of sisters, we would have named Dr. Quinn and Medicine Woman, like Walker and Texas Ranger. And then every time he's yelling at the grandpa, he's like, shut up, old man. He's like, he was a grown man with a beard. Like all this stuff is just,
Yeah.
there's nostalgic, like whatever, but like this is on par. Like as dumb as it sounds, like how people like when they talk about like the '90s and they're like Happy Gilmore is like my favorite Adam Sandler. That was like
Or
my jam. Like this
Boy,
is
Happy Gilmore, Liar, Liar, like all those
yeah,
movies.
like this is the equivalent after like the 2000s, where it's like, well, I
Yeah.
would see Liar Liar is just a great movie plus the comedy. But yeah, in terms of just like the dumb comedies in a sense, like this is that
Mm-hmm.
version of it for me, where it's like I just it's one where it's all about like I love like with everything with how the racing team keeps going back and forth based on like who's popular, like whether it's Sacha Baron Cohen's character or like Cal when he takes over for Ricky when he's on his downfall. I like his arc. I like everything dealing with him becoming a family man, how he's becoming the pizza delivery driver, and he reconnects with his dad, and then they bring the family stuff, and then the dad dips again because just doesn't want to have the responsibility. Like I just love all that stuff, and I always have. So it's one of those ones where out of all of these movies, this is the one where I take honestly the granted for the most in terms of like my favorites of like always, you know what I mean? Like it's at the bottom. Like if I look at like my top tier comedies that like have potential for like top 100, this should be in it, but for some reason I always take it for granted. But like literally every time I watch it, like for example, if I were to put it on right now and I'm watching it, like I would probably be paying attention to that more than doing like work. Like if I'm editing and I just want to have this in the background, I'm starting to like watch the story because I love it. You know what I mean? It's just always been one of those for me, and this is essentially how like when people describe Anchorman, that's how I feel about Talladega Nights, and that's why I don't diss the Anchorman love. I just know it's not for me, and honestly, like
Well, I say the same thing for me with Talladega Nights. Like I don't diss people who like it. I get why people dig it. Like I'm not oblivious to that. You know what I mean? But like it's just never really clicked for me personally. So that's why I have it lower, and I just never had that affinity from the start. But I see why people love it. You know what I mean? I'm not oblivious to that.
yeah, and it's once again, it's just one of those where it's like I enjoy just the buddy stuff of Cal. Like I said, he's got the arc of with his kids, his parents. Like it's just got enough for me that it's just like yeah, I love this movie, and I just quote it. Obviously the simple ones. If you're not first, you're last. I want to go fast. You know what I mean? Like I said, everything. I'm coming at you like a spider monkey. Like all that type of stuff. It just makes literally no sense out of context of the movie, but it just in shake and bake. Like all of it just works for me, and it always just has. And yeah, I love this movie. But yeah, so now we're getting into that was start of my top 3. Now, what is your number 3? for the top three.
My number three is a movie you're not big on, but it's The Big Short. I like The Big Short a lot, and especially on the rewatch I did. It wasn't super recently. I rewatched it like 6 months ago, just because I found myself like around work and stuff just thinking about that movie. Like I hadn't seen it in a long time, and I just like some of the scenes just swirl in my head. I'm like, I need to scratch that itch, and just like put it on, and like
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff just really worked for me. Now, to be fair, I have a background like with my dad. He's been a financial guy his whole life, so I've actually always like been intrigued by like stock market stuff and like housing and financial things and banking. Like all that stuff has been in and around my life because my dad was like a banking guy and a financial guy and stuff for years and years and years. So like that stuff, like I know a little bit more about it than probably the average person. So like I could dig with that. Now, while yeah, it does get a little confusing throughout the movie as far as like what they're doing, I still think it's easy enough to follow as far as you just basically know the like the real basics of it is that like yeah, they're just betting on the housing market to fail. They think it's going to fail, and everybody else just it blows them off and says it's never going to happen. It's basically impossible. And then like when it happens, it happens. But I like a lot of the escalation of it, the kind of impending dread of them sounding the alarms, and everybody else just kind of living these lives like it's not happening. I think the scene and the well, it's not just one scene, but the whole sequence where Steve Carell and them go down to Florida and discover like all the houses that are for sale and like those guys just giving out mortgages like they're candy, you know what I mean? And like getting everybody sucked in, and they start to have this freak out, and he calls him. He's like, "It's gonna collapse! It's gonna collapse! Oh my god! Oh my god! It's gonna come down! Like, oh my, this is insane!" Da da da. Like, and he's freaking out, and he's sounding the alarm. Like all that stuff is really good. I like Christian Bale's just kind of laid back, weird character, stuff where he sends out like the emails about like I'm not gonna allow any more sales, and everybody's like, I'm gonna fucking sue you, like F you, like you're done for, and he's just rolling with it. Like I love his performance. Brad Pitt's good as kind of that old veteran guy. Like he's a lot of fun. And yeah, Ryan Gosling is dynamite in this movie too. Like he always is, but I like his character as well. So I just dig the vibe of it. Again, I don't love it as much as like something like The Wolf of Wall Street, which, me and you have a ton of
Yeah.
love for, Raw, only because it's not that kind of movie. But I could definitely see myself going back to this a lot. I just really can roll with the pacing of this movie. I think is really good. And like I said, I may not understand every little detail of what's going on, but I really like the sense of an impending dread in this movie, and the actual collapse, like when it happens, and sort of the payoffs, So yeah, I really like The Big Short, and I could definitely see myself going back to this a lot. Not like top 100 material or anything like that, but I can see myself going back to this like a whole lot in the future. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's one of the ones where, like I said, I appreciate like even everything because I didn't mention earlier, but like everything with Christian Bale's character, like with the rock and roll in the middle, and like doing and
yeah.
just like having his it's never clear, but like he's either like on the spectrum or like there's something off about him, you know what I mean?
He
And it
might be a little autistic or
yeah.
Aspergery kind of thing.
But it's not
Yes.
it's not making a thing in terms of like acknowledging the concept, just a character thing that is just
Mhm.
part of the character, you know what I mean? And obviously it's based on true story, so it's not making a big deal about it, but it's not also shying away from it. So I respect those types of decisions, and obviously the fun cameos and stuff. Like I didn't specifically mention those, but like even though they're it's essentially like how people diss Nolan movies for being like expositional, and it's like obviously this one is you give it a pass because it's literally a cutaway, but like it's essentially the same thing, and it just takes me out of the movie, even though it's fun. It's just because I don't care about the stuff. Whereas in like in Inception or Interstellar for the Nolan movies, like it's like space or time travel, so at least works for me because I'm interested in the concept. Of this one, I just don't care. You know, what I mean, it's just not my
No, I mean,
bag.
yeah, it's a weird beat where like, yeah, you're probably talking about like the Margot Robbie thing where she's like
Yeah,
in the
Margot Robbie,
bathtub.
Selena Gomez, and
But I like it done better in something like Wolf of Wall Street when Leo breaks the fourth wall when he's walking through the hallway, and he's just like, "Now what
exactly.
were we? What the thing? Whatever. What were we doing? Oh, you know what? It really doesn't matter. We were making a lot of money, and was it legal? Absolutely fucking not.
Yeah,
That sort of thing. Like that's a little more fun where it's just they just blow it off, and it's like you're not gonna understand it. It doesn't matter. Like we're doing
literally,
illegal shit for money. Like whatever. Like that's all you need. Yeah, this one's a little more like heavy-handed as far as like, oh, I'm gonna explain it to you, but it's gonna be Margot Robbie in a bathtub, which is again, it's a weird beat that kind of comes out of nowhere, and I don't really like that beat because the rest of the movie like doesn't really do any of that. I'm just fine with them just doing the stuff and just rolling with it. Again, I can get the basics of what's going on without knowing the specifics, because everybody freaking out or pushing back on them or whatever. Like, I'm fine with all that. But again, I may appreciate it because I have that background as far as like my family being involved in that business, and I get a little more into it than other people. But I totally get why people wouldn't vibe with it as much. Yeah.
And that's fair.
Mhm.
Speaking of ones that people don't vibe with, I've learned within this community, you're either a diehard fan of this movie or you're just not. My number 2 is Step Brothers. Uh,
My two is also Step Brothers. So this is
yeah,
the one we match up.
I had a
Number two,
feeling.
yeah.
This movie, this movie is just the ones where it has no. It has no, like, for example, like if I'm comparing it to like Superbad, where it's like, oh, I grew up like that. It doesn't have that relativity of like, oh, I
Mhm.
100% like feel, this movie. And it's one of those where it's like, I still love it because just the chemistry of the two, the bonkers nature of it, just the concept of like
Mhm.
what we're doing with these two grown men who see, yeah. I Sean Sandberg coming in hot. I was actually just about to mention him about The Big Short. Like it's in his like top 5, or it's one of those where it's like, yeah, I don't vibe with it. But yeah, Step Bro is one of the ones where it's like similar to Talladega Nights. I just quote it for like no reason. Like it's just part of that, Catalina wine mixer. He's dick like Kobayashi.
Mhm.
You're gonna eat that white dog shit. Cops doesn't come on till 4. Why y'all sweaty? Let's watch Cops. Cops don't come on till 4. Put
Mhm.
my nuts on your drum cycle. Like all that stuff. Like if you actually like, it's ironic because I was talking about like Anchorman where I watch clips. If you kind of watch these clips, they're not as funny. It's just the context of the flow of the movie and just the
Right.
progression of just
Yeah.
absurdity that is what makes this
Mhm.
movie work. And like that's why I said like within this community, like because this community is full of like younger people who definitely weren't like there for like the cultural impact similar to like Napoleon Dynamite. So if you're not 100% in, I can kind of understand why because it just doesn't make sense outside of just from start to finish. But like, yeah, it's quick 90 minutes. Like it just goes by. It's so much fun. Everything with the brother, Adam Scott, everything with the parents, it actually divides them, and it's actually got kind of sad. The Catalina wine mix at the end, the scene when the montage when they're becoming best friends and they're doing karate in the garage and they're making bunk
Yeah.
beds. He's like, "What is that? Is that a power drill? No, it's my toothbrush. That's not your toothbrush." Like stupid shit like that. Where it's like these are
No
grown
power
men.
tools. Hey,
Yeah,
Brendan, no power tools.
just
Oh, sorry,
sleepwalking
we're
stuff.
already doing it. Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
just wild. So yeah, I've always loved this movie, and it's been as high as like in my top 30s for my top 100. Like it's that high, and it's been just outside. Like it's always been somewhere in there. But like with me as comedies, in terms of like my favorites, I take comedies in as a whole, similar like what I was saying with Talladega, just for granted because I'm like, oh yeah, of course I love comedies because they're funny, but how do they make me feel? You know what I mean? And it's another one where it's like I don't rewatch comedies that often because, like, I know I love them. Why would I rewatch them? Let me watch other stuff. Let me watch new stuff. Let me watch the dramas that I need to give a second chance. So it's
Right,
like I take comedies for granted a lot, but I love them, dude. Anytime I have an open conversation, like you would assume, like a lot of these comedies are like in my top 20 because of how much I love them. So yeah,
right.
this is my jam. What are your thoughts on Step Brothers?
No,
As your
no,
number
yeah.
two as well.
Yeah, Step Brothers, it rocks. It's great, and what I like about the movie is that yeah, you have this. It's almost like a split movie because yeah, the first half of the movie you have the stuff where they're battling against each other. Where
Yeah,
there's they hate each other and they're going back and forth and
right.
all that stuff. When it makes that turn to where they become the best friends, it still maintains that pacing and it's still funny. You know what I mean? If anything, it might even get funnier.
Mhm.
Once they make that turn. So like the fact that it can work in both scenarios with them being adversaries and with them being friends. I think that's one of the great things about the movie because it could take a turn. You know what I mean? Like when they turn to become best friends, it could have gone bad. Like where it's like it's not as interesting anymore. It's them battling back and forth. Because yeah, all the stuff and when they're going back and forth, when I'm burying you, like shut up, like just embrace it, like just feel the dirt, all that shit. And when they're freaking out, I heard my son yell rape, like all that stuff. Like Mary Steenburgen and Richard Jenkins are phenomenal in this movie. Like I love their chemistry and even their stories. Yeah, and they're
They
a lot
made
of
them
fun.
defend each
Um,
other. It's so
yeah,
sad.
and at least the Adam Scott and Catherine Hahn stuff is like interesting, just with their relationship and their dynamic, and her like really hating him,
I
but
love
like she
you.
can't get out. She's like totally stuck. He plays a phenomenal, like one of the best douchebags ever
Yeah,
in like
does a really great
movies.
job.
I think like Adam Scott is so good, and I'm a big Adam Scott fan because I love like Parks and Recreation and stuff. So like seeing him as not the nice guy like is a lot of fun when you go back to this movie even after Parks and Rec, and realizing that he's absolutely tremendous. But yeah, I think everything in this movie works. Like I said, the fact that it works both as when they're enemies and friends, I think is really substantial because that could have gone very very wrong. But yeah, it's the best movie they've ever done together. You know, as far as
Yeah,
John C. Riley,
even I
Will
agree, and I love
Ferrell.
Talladega Nights, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah, but I think their chemistry is just at its peak here, and it really is peak Will Ferrell and John C. Riley. Like when you put it kind of in the grand scheme of things, like this was the top of the mountain. So,
Ironically,
um,
Talladega Nights and Step Bros are the two things I've seen John C. Riley in first. So like going back and seeing him in like '90s stuff and dramatic stuff like Boogie Nights, or
mhm,
even I just rewatched. It's one of the most underrated like crime movies of all time, State of Grace from 1990. But he's got a decent role in that movie. But it's like that's a pure crime movie, like no comedy. And it's one of those you see him, you're like, holy shit, John C. Riley's like
well,
this.
he was in Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise, like he's in the NASCAR movie, like
Yeah,
and then he's in Talladega Nights, which is like weird when you go back to it. But yeah, like he's really really good. Yeah, I just think every one of these scenes is great. But I also just like the progression of the story too, and where the characters go. So all that stuff and all the side
and
characters
it's
have
also
good
well
story too.
directed. Like
It's
obviously
good.
we're not talking
Yeah.
about Adam McKay on this one, but like it's well directed. That's what makes it stand apart from like these others like
Mhm.
quote unquote studio comedies that you see all the time. Like it really like has a sense of style because it does a good job, whether it's the pacing, whether it's specifically honing in on a shot that you need for
Mhm.
whatever. Like the scene the first time that Richard Jenkins fish snaps like on Christmas Eve, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to the Cheesecake Factory," and like holds on him and just sees like the sorrow and like the pain and the aggression like
Mhm.
when he's done. And then when he let the scene when he like spanks him and stuff, like it does a good job of like balancing the sadness while
Mhm.
still always being a comedy through and through. And it does a great job. Um,
Yeah.
your number one is different from mine. My number one's different from yours. I'll talk about my number one first because you talked about it earlier. The other
Yeah.
guys. This is
Mhm.
a movie that I love buddy cop movies, and the
Mhm.
difference of this movie of like why I have it at the highest because like I love the side characters so much that it like makes me laugh so much. Like I love Michael Keaton's character this the entire time. Oh,
Yeah.
I got a serial rape stuff. Oh shit, it's my other job. He's at Bed Bath and Beyond, and then the
Right.
scene at one of my favorite scenes like of all time is when they're at the funeral for Danson Highsmith and they're like fighting like, oh, you want some? Let's go. And then Mike Keaton's like, there's like whispering, but it's like really yelling at them and stuff. And it does a great job. He gives them the wooden gun. And he
Uh-huh.
keeps calling him Gene. He's like, "Oh, it's Captain. All right, Captain Gene." Like, no, just Captain. And just like it does a good job of making Will Ferrell look like an idiot, but still like he's not an idiot at the same time. And like everything with Ava Mendez, I love Ray Stevenson's characters coming in just being a super badass. But then Mark Wahlberg beating him up, and then Will Ferrell being like, Imagine if you didn't shoot Jeter, where your career would be. This fact spectacular. It just does a great job of like, and even the one scene like when they blow up at the store, and everyone's like, how do they walk away from this? Is a movie I call complete bullshit. Like it's just it's a commentary. Essentially a spoof on the '80s action movies while still being a good 2010s action movie. Like this and 21 Jump Street are like up there for me, and just like I just love what they're doing and like the chemistry of the two. And yeah, I have a blast with this. Everything with the Steve Coogan stuff. I love how they accidentally fall into it because it's like he's going into him for the parking or the scaffolding fines or whatever. He's researched that, and then you just kind of stumble in on this big old money laundering. I think it's money laundering or like some sort of scheme. Like you said, I don't know specifics, but it's one of those where it's an actual thing. Like it's some white collar crime, but it's serious because obviously you got these hitmen going after him because a lot of money's not hitman, but like badasses. And then I really everything with Mark Wahlberg's ex-wife. He's like, you learned to dance ironically. Yeah, we used to practice this so we can make fun of the fairies for all the dancing. It's just like you learn how to dance, you learn how to do ballet ironically. Yeah, like it's just so stupid. Like, but that
Yeah.
sounds like something like an '80s comedy or an '80s comedy or action movie would do. And I don't know, this is just a blast. I've always loved it. And the whole tuna thing is just my favorite. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, if I was a lion and if I was a lion, you were a tuna, I'd eat you. He's like, oh yeah. Um, tunas, blah blah blah, going to schools, and then lion does my water. It
Science
just goes, yeah,
Earth rant. like why the tuna would actually win the fight or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's yeah.
it's just so much fun. It's one of those ones where it
Did
goes
that
on
go?
for too long, but it works.
Didn't go the way you thought it was going to go. Okay, good. No.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, this movie's just a banger, dude. I love, I quote it all the time, and you know, like I said, all stuff. You know, Yankee Clipper, Paper Bitch. I did my first desk pop, and you know, like I said, everything with Michael Keaton's character. It's just, this movie's just a blast, man. I
Michael
love it.
Keaton, yeah, again, you forget that Michael Keaton's in this movie, like coming back to it, but like, and you also forget that he did comedy in like the '80s, like and some of the '90s. Like he's a comedy guy. He was a stand-up comedian, you know, like he knows how to do comedy. He knows how to hit those beats, and like he has great timing. And yeah, I think one of my favorite scenes is like the one you mentioned where he's doing the pep talk for the Bed Bath and Beyond people at his other job, and he's mixing in like his police stuff. He's like, okay, well, do take that seriously. I want y'all to walk in pairs because there is a rapist out there. At the end, when he leaves, when he gets paged, and he goes, "All right, y'all stay safe out there," as if they have to be safe, you know, in the Bed Bath and
Exactly.
Beyond place. Like, yeah, I liked all that stuff. I think he kind of stole the movie for me. He was a lot of fun. But yeah, again, I'm positive on it now. Like I wasn't, I was kind of lukewarm on it. I could see myself going back to it eventually. Yeah, it's just not like it's not in that personal favorite realm yet. You know what I mean? Of like
Yeah, this
comedies,
movie
but
is also like a fun group watch too, just because of like it's
yeah.
similar like 21 Jump Street, where you can just put it in the background with a group and you can just quote the shit out of it, but
Mhm.
still enjoy you
Yeah.
if you're like eating or drinking them, you can still enjoy like some of the action set pieces and everything, you know, America. Did you just yell? Did you step on the gas and yell? Nope. And it's just, you know, little LRB,
I feel like
little river band.
feel like we're literally driving inside a vagina right now.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
people's like, does that car come with a dental dam? Like all that shit
Exactly.
was really
FBI, female body effect, like all that stuff.
yeah,
It's just so much fun. And yeah,
yeah,
so and then he gets his wooden gun taken away, and then he gets the whistle, and they steal our shoes. Why do they keep stealing our shoes? And it's just shit like that, where it's just like it's just dumb stuff that just stands out. Yeah, this movie's a blast. But now we're on to your number
yeah.
one.
My number one is Anchorman. So and it's quickly become and my journey with this movie has been so interesting, going from not really enjoying it in 2004 when I saw it, to just gradually kind of going back to it over and over, you know, and it finally like turning that thing, and not just turning the corner, but like me really like getting involved with it, getting engaged with it, loving like almost every scene, loving where it goes, and quoting this movie damn near on a daily basis. Every time it's hot outside and like people are around people, I go, "It's so hot. Milk was a bad choice."
Yeah,
like for no reason whatsoever. Like I say that all the time.
quotations.
Yeah, like all that stuff is, and it took a lot of my friends in my inner circle kind of quoting this movie a lot, just to be like, I must be missing something, and then really appreciate it later as I found my humor is really with a lot of crazy non sequiturs, just random lines that don't really like make sense but make me laugh, like just those off the wall, like silly things, you know, when you know. Champ is just like, you know, I will, or you know, or stuff like in Step Brothers, where he's just like, I will stab you in the neck with a knife. Like that's just such a weird line that like nobody says. You know, but I like lines like that. Or, you know, when Champ in this movie is like rattling off his credentials, and then he'll just say something like, you know, maybe I'll go do this. Maybe I'll go to SeaWorld. You know, take my pants off. You know, whatever I feel like doing. Just random shit like that that just comes out of nowhere and hits me, and is a lot of fun. Yeah, the iconic scenes of like, you know, the Sex Panther, and like their back and forth of, you know, you're a smelly pirate hooker, you look like a blueberry, you know, like all that stuff is back and forth, is really good. But I think the chemistry between everybody in this movie, you can tell everybody's just having a blast and like having so much fun. But I even like the core story of like Christina Applegate like being this like 70s, you know, female news anchor, like breaking the mold or whatever, and how it kind of affects everybody around them. The prejudice stuff in the movie is actually really good. And yeah, like seeing how everybody kind of reacts to that around it. So I even like the core story, and that stuff is a lot of fun. And when, you know, Ron kind of has to make his comeback, all that stuff is great. When he goes to round up the news team, and they're like, we're right here, Ron. Like they're just in the bar already, and he's like, oh no, right here. Oh, okay, let's go. Like all that stuff is really good for me. Everybody is perfectly cast. Fred Willard's great. All the stuff works for me. So yeah, I've gone from I've
That's
gone
a
from
fun.
not
What song do they sing?
Afternoon Delight, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah. all that stuff just comes out of nowhere and it is good. And yeah, even the fight, like the fight is so ridiculous with like the Tim Robbins cameo and like Ben Stiller and like all the people that show up.
I think Brick killed
You
a
know,
guy.
yeah, like where did you get a grenade? Yeah, like and he's gonna try it. Yeah, like I think you might be wanted for murder right now, Brick. You should probably lay low for a little while. Like all that stuff is really funny. Yeah, and I even just like the setting of like the '70s. Like I think he captured the yeah, the costuming is really good. Like he captures kind of the vibe of the decade really well. So yeah, it's a movie that my journey has been so interesting, going from not liking it to it being literally probably my top 5 favorite comedies of all time. It's not my, I think it's like probably number 3 or 4, something like that, because
Okay.
that and Step Brothers are real close to each other. Blazing Saddles, The Animal House are still my number 1 and number 2. They kind of always will be. But yeah, these are right up there as far as modern comedies, along with 40-Year-Old Virgin. So yeah, these are right
Yeah,
there
that
as far
like I
as
said, that's why I've never judged like the big
yeah.
Anchorman lovers, because like even just having just talking about it, like there's bits of it, the highlights are super high. Like it's one of the ones where the highest are the highest. I don't, it just never connects with me as a whole. But I mean, it's still my number 4. I mean, it's not like it's way off,
Mhm.
because I still am, I'm more likely to watch this than obviously any of his political stuff, and Anchorman 2 sucks. So yeah, that's where we're at. But
Yeah.
there we go. I don't think you have any surprise of what our number 8 is. Our number 8 for Adam McKay
No.
movies, Anchorman
Okay,
2.
so we did match twice. So 2 of these will be easy. But yeah. So or actually,
Yeah,
well,
it'll
that
yeah,
one might
you'll see
because of
uh,
our
because of the
yeah.
averages. Number 7, Don't Look Up.
Okay.
Number 6, Vice.
Nice.
Number 5, Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. That one hurt me. Number 4, The Big Short. Number
Hmm.
3, my number 1, The Other Guys.
Hmm.
Number 2, your number
Anchorman.
1, Anchorman, The
Yeah.
Legend of Ron
I say
Burgundy, and
number 2 is Brothers, so it's got to be number 1. Yeah.
And
Right.
our
Yeah.
and our collective number
Yeah.
1 is Step Brothers, which, based on our conversation, I don't, there's no issue with that for me, at least. Like it's like,
Yeah. Step Brothers
like
rocks. Yeah. Step
yeah,
Brothers is great. Yeah.
like if that's our number 1, and then our 2 number 1s are our 2 and 3, I'm totally cool with that. Honestly, just looking at this list
Yeah.
and just seeing The Big Short at number 4 is the only thing that hurts me. Everything else, I'm fine with. Like
Well, I
Big
mean,
Short
and I
and
think
Talladega Nights, and I'd be happy.
people can agree. I think Adam McKay's run of between Anchorman and Step Brothers was like, and or excuse me, I should say Anchorman to other guys was like pretty great. Like
Yeah,
as far as most people like
comedies at
really
least.
did, and people have their favorites in within those movies, but him really banging out those comedies like was where he hit his stride. And yeah, his political satirical stuff later on has been hit or miss for a lot of people, but some people really dig it. Like
Yeah,
yeah, I really like The Big Short, but yeah, it's one of those things where he's taken such a career turn that it's so weird. I wonder if he'll ever go back to straight comedy again in the future, because I know he did. He went back and did Anchorman 2, but he was still doing comedies around that time.
he's
Um,
doing that basketball show right now, which I know
okay.
is Will Ferrell, and it's on HBO, talking about the Lakers or whatever. So
Mhm.
I want to look up the genre and just kind of get a feel of like what that show is. It's the genre is biography, drama, sports. So it's not a comedy. So yeah, maybe even if he doesn't go political, he's gonna cover maybe like a biography. Like he only directed one episode, but he like co-created it or whatever, or something like
Yeah.
that, or a producer on it or something like that. But I know he's involved in that. But it's one of the ones where I
Mhm.
could see him doing just a normal like biopic. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's, even if it's a political figure and it not being a political movie, just like how like Lincoln, was
Oh, right. Yeah.
it had political backdrop, but it's essentially a character study. Like I could see him
Mhm.
doing something like that, or doing, even if it's a sports thing, like if for some reason they made a Bulls movie from the 90s Bulls, like I could see them making a movie about that, or something like, what I mean. I could just I
Sure.
would trust
Sure.
him. Let's just put it this way. Like if his name's attached, I would be like, I'm gonna give it a shot, because regardless
Yeah.
of where
Yeah.
I stand on the political stuff, I know he's a talented filmmaker, and he's going to bring he's going to bring his A game with his actors, and they're going to do a good job. And at the bare minimum, I'm not going to be bored. Like Anchorman 2, I technically was bored, but only because like it just felt like a little too late. If Anchorman 2 came out around the time of the other guys, I don't think I would hate it as much, because I just felt like it's
Mhm.
one of the ones that, yeah. So Sean doesn't think he's going to go to comedy anytime soon with Winning Time and Succession. So
Yeah. I'm
if
just
if he
curious
said
if
drama stuff,
if
cool with that.
at some point, maybe with like a newer star that's like ups and comes up, and maybe he works with some of his veteran guys again. Like it would just be interesting if he went back, at this point to do a straight comedy. Like I just think that would be interesting. Because I know they bounced around the idea of doing a sequel to Step Brothers. I don't really want them to because Step Brothers is kind of perfect, the way it is.
Yeah,
And
especially
I don't
after
want them to
the fall of Sherlock
Anchorman 2.
Holmes. Yeah,
And
Holmes and
also
Watson.
Anchorman. We already have the precedent of Anchorman to Anchorman 2. It's like it didn't work. Like I don't want
Especially
them to
too
do that
late.
with Step Brothers. It's just like I like just leave it alone. But I know they've talked about that for a while. But yeah. And after you said like the Holmes and Watson thing, which is was not good. I know that wasn't him, but like it's just I don't think the magic is there.
Like
But yeah, it'd be
hypothetically, if
interesting.
you were to make a sequel, I would actually, ironically, would want to see a Talladega Nights one because I feel like you could have Ricky Bobby be like a driving coach now because he's too old to drive, or maybe someone with his vision. It could be a mental health thing, and it's like, oh, he can't do it. One of his sons now, or both of his sons, or like in theory, like I'm not pitching it, but like if out of all his movies, if you were to do a sequel, I'd rather it be that one because
If
more
you
than
if
Step
you
Brothers.
imagine you had to pick an Adam McKay sequel or something, you know what I mean? You
Exactly.
pick
I'm definitely not picking Step
Talladega Nights.
Brothers.
Yeah. You got Talladega Night sequel. Yeah, pitch a Talladega Night sequel. So there you
Or
go.
I'm pitching
Uh,
Anchorman 3 and just hope it's better. That's it. Like I'm definitely not picking Step Brothers. That's not working. But yeah, so that was our show. Behind the scenes, we decided what our next 4 or 5 episodes technically are because the next one is already set in stone. So next week we're doing the Jurassic Park franchise with Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Dominion coming out. So we're gonna have all 6 of those movies. And then what did we decide for the next 4 after
Yeah,
that?
so before the show, we kind of, we like to at least lay out the next couple of weeks so we can start prepping and start making our things. And we try to tie in as much as we can with current events, but sometimes it's hard to get those dead weeks where you don't have much going on. But we just pull from our bag of, 100 or so ideas. So we can always pull that up and just pull something. But we will tie it in with something current the week after that. So Lightyear's coming out. So we're going to do Lightyear plus the Toy Story franchise because obviously it ties in. So that'll be 5 movies, and we'll talk about that franchise, and it'll be a little different. So we usually try to bounce back and forth between franchise and filmographies or whatever, but we're just going to roll with that just because it's current. We'll bounce back to filmographies the week after that. The week of the 29th with we decided to do Matthew Vaughn because he's got a wide array of some summer blockbuster stuff and a few other little genre pictures like Layer Cake and
Neither
things.
of us
So
seen Kingsman, so it gives us the Kingsman, so it gives an
Kings
excuse to finally watch it.
Right, and go back and watch some of those other movies. So that should be interesting. So he's got a pretty eclectic filmography. That'll be fun. And then to tie in with Thor: Love and Thunder, we're not necessarily ranking like MCU stuff or Thor stuff in general, but we will rank his movies. So we're going to do Taika Waititi, just his filmography in general. So we'll do a filmography while still talking about Thor, Thor Ragnarok, mixed in so we can talk current stuff, but just talk about him as a filmmaker in general. So you got stuff like Jojo Rabbit and Hunt for the Wilder People, What We Do in the Shadows, all that kind of stuff.
Even his
So that
early
should
ones,
be.
Boy and Eagle vs. Shark, which I've never seen, and I know
I've never
they're
seen it.
definitely seen one. So maybe we could pitch it for someone, or maybe give you the advice, stay away. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, definitely talk about his progression, and then we'll build up to a big. We kind of do these big crossovers every now and then. We'll build to something big, and it works because these are big, summer kind of big blockbuster movies. So we're gonna do one that I had an idea for a long time ago, and I'm excited for. We'll do Terminator versus RoboCop. So we're doing another crossover of mashing
Yep.
of the franchise, kind of like we did for Alien versus Predator, because they kind of tie in. I feel like Terminator versus RoboCop, it's like cyborgs, and sci-fi and
Cyber action horror, like it's a good combo of all that.
yeah, sci-fi, and they both have a little dystopian stuff in there too, so
Yep.
we can talk about that. So I feel like they blend really well. We got 4 RoboCop movies, and as of right now, 6 Terminator movies. So that'll be a big 10
Okay.
movie epic
And
ranking.
just
So that'll.
this works for me, but if you haven't seen all the RoboCop sequels, I haven't. They're on AMC Plus if you have that subscription, or if you want to do a free month one and like kind of watch those with us, that would be a fun one. And I know most
Or
people
or like
know
you
the
said,
Terminators.
YouTube Premium. If you do YouTube Premium, you can do that for a month and go watch those, on YouTube
Yeah.
Premium because they're on YouTube officially. So but that'll be a fun ranking to see kind of where all those line up because I mean they're very different movies despite being very similar. So there's a lot going on in both those franchises. So we'll see where those lay out. That'll be a big epic one. We'll kind of build up to in about a month or so. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So,
Mhm.
what have you done recently on Movie Hero Network, and what's coming up to you guys?
Yeah, so on a podcast about movies that I do with Jacob Barber on the Movie Hero Network, we just did a anniversary show where we talked about showcase movies that were celebrating 5, 10, 15, 20, those type of anniversaries. So we did that, and we came out with some really good recommendations. There's a movie called What's Up, Doc? We were both super high on from 1972.
That's
Really,
Peter
really fun.
Bogdanovich in it.
Peter Bogdanovich, which I had never seen any Bogdanovich movies. I know he passed away recently, but I highly recommend that movie. So that was one of the big
I'm
ones.
pretty sure that's the guy who did Paper Moon, and I highly recommend that one.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I highly recommend What's Up, Doc. But go watch that show. You'll see us rave about that movie. That movie's great, and that was one of the ones we showcased. But we talked about a bunch of different movies. We try to do sort of a recommendation-based thing over there. This week we'll be doing the Disney Renaissance, so we'll be going to animated stuff. With talking about the Little Mermaid to Tarzan. Kind of the Disney Renaissance of like the 90s, basically. So 10 movies in there, and we're not like ranking them or anything. We're just going to go and talk about where Disney was at the time. Each of the movies kind of chronologically. And then, we've got some fun tier ranker and tournament fight stuff coming up on the Movie Hero Network. So we'll be doing Jordan Anderson's top 128. We'll be starting that series. We kind of break it up into pieces. And then we'll be doing one where I will be hosting tournament fights. We'll kind of switch it. I'm going to be hosting tournament fights next Tuesday night because it's one of a tournament that I've been wanting to do for a while. So I'm kind of taking the lead on it, and I'm going to host it. We're going to be doing When Animals Attack movies. So animals attack stuff, and it kind of ties in with Jurassic Park as well, with the dinosaur stuff. So
Animals Attack movie might be on that list.
Yeah, right. So good stuff. We'll be doing that, and I'll be hosting, so that'll be a lot of fun. But what do you got going? You got a lot of trivia stuff going on. You got some battleground stuff going on. You got all kinds of things going on.
Yeah, so we took a little about 2-week hiatus because we just finished the first set of matches, and we just started the teams tournament setup. So there will be trivia singles and teams leagues are going to be kicking back. Matches start recording this weekend, and then we're going to uploading next week. Make sure you check out both myself and Austin over on Movie Battleground on TMG Entertainment, because definitely do some debate and stuff. As of right now, I'm the champ, and I have a title defense that's good. Aaron just uploaded the schedule, and so my match is going to be up at the end of the month. So go ahead and check that out. I'm actually playing Aaron. So
match up about 2 weeks after that I recorded with Papa West, so you can check that out.
Definitely relevant there. And then on Mondays, me and John, we took a week off because Monday was Memorial Week. But just recently, we just talked about French horror. We talked about Raw, Titan, and Martyrs, which was definitely an interesting conversation. So that was definitely that was a fun one.
T10. I have the Blu-ray sitting over there, and Jacob and I just to jump 2 weeks, we're just going to be doing a wild card show about like what we're watching lately or whatever. Just we can talk about whatever we want. So I want to bust that out and then watch your episode of it. I blind bought the Blu-ray, so I want to see that. And then watch
Spoilers. We go into full spoilers in that episode, so I'm glad you didn't watch, because you can't really talk about any of those 3 movies without spoilers. Like it's an experience. But so and then next Monday, I already forgot what we're talking about, so I don't have that on the top of my head. But I know that it's stuff I've watched recently, so it's like I don't have to rewatch them. But anyway, that's not the point. So it's just a lot of fun stuff. So make sure, if you randomly clicked on this video because you saw Adam McKay ranked, you're like, I want to talk about Adam McKay. Subscribe to the channel, because we have a lot of fun stuff over here. Make sure you hit that post notifications, the bell, because even though we are consistently on Mondays for There'll Be Horror and Wednesdays for Let's Rank Stuff, we don't have a specific time because we're life happens. So we have jobs, we have trivia stuff that I'm recording, debate stuff. Austin and myself.
I recorded last week, so we had to work around that. There's things that happen.
We're flexible, so it'll be on there. And
behind the scenes, we always do it on Wednesday, but I always hit up Henry in the afternoon and be like, all right, what's your schedule looking like? What's your night looking like?
Because one of our days are going to be different for one reason or the other. Like today, technically, I could have gone 5 EST, and you could have too, but I was like, I want to rewatch Anchorman 2, so let's wait.
Yeah. Usually go early or we go late. We it could be anywhere between like 6 p.m. and midnight. Who knows? It could be any time.
But we're doing a good job recently of keeping these around the hour length now. We've got a good pace now. We've done over 10 of these. We're doing a good job of like figuring out our flow. And
like Terminator versus RoboCop, those big mega ones, we might do like a mega stuff. So talk about a lot of things, but we try to keep these like to hour and a half.
But if you think about it, if you're tuning in for Terminator versus RoboCop, you're probably okay with a longer episode. So no restriction. Cares. You know what I mean? Like even next week with Jurassic Park, maybe people are gonna be like, who fucking cares? Let's just go wild. So we'll see. But yeah, so like I said, make sure you subscribe. By the way, comment below your Adam McKay ranking, because especially with the political stuff and the comedy stuff and the different eras, like the early 2000s and mid 2000s, that's a specific time period. So if you came to
Hmm.
them late, like I know we have a lot of younger audience too. So if you came to those late, maybe it doesn't click for you as well, and maybe the political stuff is more relevant because the woke generation or whatever. That's just kind of your bag, and it's not
Maybe you're
mine.
not big on Will Ferrell. You know, he could be a generational thing as well. Maybe you're not
I
because
know I know there are people that are not big on welfare, so I'm definitely curious to see that in that ranking. So.
definitely different than 2000s Will Ferrell. You know, when he was on fire. So it's definitely one of those things too. We're
Exactly.
put on right now. So yeah, that was kind of prime Will Ferrell back then with some of these movies.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, like I said, with that said, my name's Henry Confidential. That is Awesome Pets Out. Make sure you go subscribe to Movie Hero Network. Make sure you're subscribed here because this is where we show up every Wednesday and rank stuff. Bye, guys.